Good morning and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another recap on the C Squared channel. We have Game 9 of the World Championship match between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren, and what a titanic struggle we had between these two competitors. We also had the first day of commentary on the chess.com channel from Fabi. Fabi, how are you feeling? It's been a long day. You definitely picked the longest day of chess to start your commentary journey. How are you feeling right now?
I'm pretty tired, and it reminded me a bit of the 2021 match when there was a lot of these sorts of games where, it's a very long day. So I'm really glad that the players decided to pick today to
Let's
to let me enjoy my commentary.
why not? Why not? Get into the groove ASAP. Now, let's dive right into the action. What do you have for
Mhm.
us today, Fabi?
So Jan was playing white, Ding Liren with the black pieces. Jan repeated e4. Ding responded with e5. We could expect this, but then on move 3 after bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez, he surprised us all. Although if we were looking at those leaked games, maybe not a huge surprise because we had seen some Berlin games. He decided to invite the Berlin with knight to f6. And unpleasant
I
surprise
was
for
watching
Jan.
the commentary as well, and you predicted this move, and you also predicted in our analysis of the leaked games as well. You said that the Berlin might occur on the board. Are you surprised that Ding did not shy away from, all the leak situation, all those stories involving that, and try to fight with different weapons?
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying. That I don't see what the leak helps with. You tell your opponent I can play the Berlin. Okay, great. I mean, I know everyone can play the Berlin. It's an option, right? It's something you have to be ready for. So what exactly did Jan get in terms of new information? Maybe just more of a headache in terms of things he has to prepare or not prepare. So anyway, we saw the Berlin. I think it's a good choice, but I think it might have been a better choice earlier in the match.
Mm-hmm.
Jan responded with d3, bishop to c5, standard theory and suit. c3, castle short, d5, knight b to d2. A very positional line, but a very theoretical one as well, which was played, for example, by Nakamura against Timur Rajabov in the Candidates, a game which Timur won. And it's a heavy battleground between top players. Ding took on e4, d takes e4 and a5. This is all standard theory. Black is trying to stop the b4 push. Jan responded with a4. Ding played queen d7. This defends the e5 pawn, taking away any possibility in the future that white will take on c6.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that was
Played.
probably a threat. Take on c6 and take on e5. Makes a lot of sense to also get
It's
ready
not
to
clear.
play rook to d8, right?
It's not clear if it's a threat, but to free your knight from c6, you might as well play this move.
Yeah.
So queen to e7 is very logical. Queen to c2 as well, defending e4 so the knight can move from d2. Knight to b8, a move which probably needs a little bit of explanation, but I think if you know the line, it's pretty standard. The knight moves away, so black can play c6 and move the knight from b8 to a better square, d7, a6, these sorts of squares. The point is, knight on c6 is a bit awkward, so we might as well get it out of the way of the attack of the bishop on b5 and maneuver it to a better square. So knight to b8, rook to e1, rook to d8, h3, h6. This is all kind of standard play. It's been seen before, not many times, but it's one of the possible ways that both sides could play. Knight to f1. Jan's maneuvering the knight around to g3, very typical. c6, bishop c4, and now knight to a6. And we were a bit surprised in the commentary that the knight didn't go to d7, but it's clear that knight to a6 was Ding's preparation, and the computer approves. It's clear that Ding knew about this line quite deeply.
So based on your feeling in the commentary booth, and you were having the live feeds as well, you felt that at this point Ding was still within his preparation.
We don't need to speculate because he said everything up to queen c7 he knew about.
Okay, because he did spend 15 minutes, so that's quite interesting to see. I would expect him to play super fast, but I guess he was just trying to recollect his files.
Very often people don't remember the precise details, but they remember more or less, and they're trying to figure out, and that's what he was saying, that he was just trying to remember the move orders and such.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of potential move orders here as well.
Yeah.
So Jan played knight to g3.
Mm-hmm.
Ding played a move which surprised us all during the commentary, but the computer suggested as his first line, it's clear that Ding was prepared, and he even said so after the game, that here he played queen c7, and it was preparation.
Yeah.
The idea is to drop the bishop back to f8, and the knight comes to c5. Very harmonious development that he's planning. Jan thought for a while and played bishop to a2. When asked what the idea was, he said no idea. So I think the idea is only he's trying to get his opponent out of preparation because he doesn't want to be playing against a computer. Here, Ding played ambitiously, b5. I think bishop to f8 is a more natural and also fine move. But Ding decided to go for it immediately, b5.
Yeah.
Jan played queen d2, a move that I was sort of expecting because he's both attacking b5, asking black, do you want to double your pawns with b takes a4, and also preparing knight to h4 and queen to f3. Here, Ding made a pretty serious mistake. Robert Hess was suggesting bishop to f8, which is a pawn sacrifice. C takes b5, a takes b5, queen takes b5, knight to c5, with ideas of bishop to a6. And Jan also mentioned that this was an idea that he was looking at, and he thought that black should play this. For some reason, Ding was not attracted to that pawn sacrifice. He played rook to b8. A little bit of a
misstep.
It was not hasty enough. Like he needs to rush a bit more because now knight to h4 came, and black is not in time to coordinate fully before white gets the threats of queen to f3 and bishop takes h6 ideas.
So this is some sort of a battle between white's attack potential on the king side versus black's counterplay on the queen side.
Yeah, this is a battle basically of tempi. If black can get knight to c5 in time, the knight can come to d3, but white wants to start play with queen f3 and bishop h6 before that happens. So bishop to f8 happened, preparing knight c5. Queen to f3 happened, preparing bishop takes h6. Ding realized there's no good way to deal with the threat of bishop h6, so he might as well start his own queenside counterplay. He took on a4, bishop takes h6, and knight to c5. Absolutely correct way of playing.
Scary. I mean, allowing this pawn on h6 to be taken off the board is extremely scary.
It's very scary, and it's clear that black lost the kingside battle, but he's counting on some sort of counterplay on the king side and on the d3 square. It's not enough for equality, but it is enough for a complex game.
Yeah.
Here, Jan played knight to g6. It's not a bad move. Maybe bishop to g5, rook to d3, and queen to e2 is a better way of playing. And this would have been another tough fight, but I think that Jan would have had very good chances to outplay his opponent there. Instead, he played knight to g6, rook takes b2, knight takes f8, rook takes f8. Here, again, it's a difficult position because white has so many options. During the commentary, we were looking at bishop takes g7, king g7, queen e3. We were looking at queen e3 immediately. We were looking at bishop to c1 was mentioned by Robert. Bishop to c4 was mentioned as well as an option. White has an abundance of choice, and the computer likes to move bishop c4 the best, but it's not an obvious move to play.
Yeah.
Instead, Jan played bishop to g5, which is an inaccuracy. Knight to h7 came. Bishop dropped back to c1. He wanted to provoke knight h7, but it turns out the knight is not badly placed on that square. Here, Ding had a really nice idea of rook to c2. And if bishop to a3, knight to b3, bishop takes f8, knight takes f8, white's rook is attacked. And if you try to get off that, remove that knight from b3, after bishop b3, a b3, black has two connected passed pawns, which are very dangerous. So Ding missed a very nice opportunity here to create a mess of a position. And he played rook b5 very quickly. I think it was a bad decision. Bishop to a3 came, rook to e8, bishop to c4. It's clear that black is dealing with some problems with the rook and the knight.
Yeah.
Ding decided, well, he had no choice at this point. He sacrificed the exchange with bishop to e6.
Good move.
Only move to stay in the game. And here, Jan could have taken on b5. C takes b5. A move like queen e3 was very accurate. And if knight to b3, rook a to d1. And black's queenside pawns are not moving so easily. And white is up material, which is enough for a large advantage.
Yeah.
So bishop takes b5 was one good way. The other interesting way was queen to e2. Telling black, okay, I'm not taking your rook, but I want you to take on c4. I'll take back, and then I attack your knight. And if your knight moves, then I'll be able to win the a4 pawn, and I have some sort of positional advantage. Both of these options were very interesting. I think that the option that Jan chose was much less precise. Bishop takes e6, knight takes e6, knight to f5. Here, Ding played a very important move, c5, stopping any sort of business on that d6 square.
Yep.
Jan played queen to e2. He's eyeing the c4 square, but already he has missed out on his advantage. Rook to b3 came, queen to c4, queen c6, protecting a4, bishop to c1. knight to f6. And now it looks like white is regaining the pawn with queen a4 or rook a4. But in case of rook takes a4, black has rook takes c3, queen takes c3, queen takes a4. And although white can capture on e5, black has two passed pawns, and the position is very double-edged.
Yeah.
Jan decided to avoid that. He went for the endgame. Queen takes a4, queen a4, rook a4. Now we saw rook takes c3, bishop b2. We were already calling for a draw, but maybe a bit prematurely here.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that a lot of pieces are getting traded off, but still, the game was not so simple.
I see you're getting some phone calls. Or
sorry about that.
No worries.
So
let's keep going.
After bishop to b2, on move 34, black played rook to b3, bishop takes c5, rook to b4, trading off the rooks or trading off the pawns. And in fact, white would not want to take on b4 because then black could take either way and have two connected pass pawns, and white does not want to deal with that.
Oof.
So rook takes a5 occurred, rook e4, knight e4. And here it felt like the game was
about to end,
nearing its end. But suddenly, rook to a4 came. And then we realized that it's not so simple to deal with this knight. And probably the best move was knight to d2. But for sure, Ding was worried about some rook g4 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And here, a move that we hadn't spotted in the commentary, absolutely. Actually, I did kind of see this idea, but I didn't think it worked. And there was like knight to f4 here.
Oh, this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant.
And if bishop takes f4, there's rook e1, king h2, knight f1. I saw this idea, but after knight f4, I thought there was rook takes g7, and I kind of didn't suggest it for this reason.
That's a
but then the king simply goes to h8, and there are no discovered checks because the bishop is hanging. And white has to take on f4, rook e1, king h2, knight f1 with a perpetual check. This would have been a nice end to the game. Ding did not go for it. He played knight to d4 instead.
Well, it's such a difficult decision, right? Because if knight f4 doesn't work, then you're just in a much worse position. When you can, however, enter into this endgame, which supposedly, at least we know that it's a draw. Yeah, with perfect play, it's a draw.
Ding made this practical decision. He's saying, okay, you're a pawn up, but 3 pawns is not much.
Yeah.
3 against 2 is very likely to be a draw. And if we ever trade knights, it's a dead draw. If we ever trade rooks, it's a likely draw. So he was probably thinking, okay, not a big deal. So knight d4 happened. Bishop takes d4, c d4, rook d4, g6, knight e3. Of course, white still wants to play this on forever, despite it being a very drawish endgame.
Mm-hmm.
King g7, rook to b4, knight to g3. Funny new move, but also not a necessary one.
Well, I guess he was going for the same type of ideas, right? If you go knight to g4 now, at least I can have like a perpetual, right? Rook e1, knight f1, and just do the perpetual.
But white isn't forced to go for that, and it's clear that black has many ways to reach similar positions, and so does white. So you play knight g3 or knight d6 or whatever, it doesn't change much.
Yeah.
Knight g3, rook b7. Knight to f5. In fact, he was happy to play the position after knight f5, gf5, because despite the pawn down and the double f1s, white's only path forward is to at some point play g4, and then he will trade off pawns, and it will likely be a draw.
Mm-hmm.
So after knight to f5, Jan decided to keep the knights on the board, knight to g4. Now they maneuvered around for a bit, rook e7, rook b5, rook e1, king h2, rook e2, rook b7, knight d6, rook a7, king to f8.
Yep.
Actually, I think here Ding had probably the easiest path to a draw. After rook to a7, he could have played knight to e4, attacking f2, and if f3, knight to f6, and that kind of just trades off knights. Maybe he was afraid of rook to e7, but then king to f8 comes. So knight to e4 was a clean path to a draw. Instead, he played king to f8. After king f8, with the threat of f5, Jan played king g3. Now f5, he played king to f3, avoiding knight e4 checks. Rook to e7, rook to a8, rook to e8. At this point, Ding was ready for the pure knight endgame. Rook takes e8, king e8. A risky decision, but it turns out that black is still doing okay after king takes e8. And Jan played knight to e5. Now g5 came, the only move not to lose the pawn on g6. Here Jan thought for a long time, and in fact it is very close to being a dangerous endgame for black.
Really?
But in all cases, it seems like black is surviving. For example, king to e3, king to e7 is the only move. f4, and now you play king to f6, and let's say knight to f3, g takes f4, king f4. If white gets knight d4, you could start to see some danger in this type of position.
Yeah.
But black is in time to play, for example, knight to b5, and once you get the king off the f4 square, once you give it a check, then black is no longer in danger because the king is not attacking the f pawn.
Yeah.
So Jan thought for a long time. He played probably the most dangerous move, h4, forces gh4, king to f4, king is invading. And here Ding thought for a long time, and we were starting to see some potential danger. For example, if he makes the move knight to e4, with the idea of f3, knight f2, followed by h3, trading off pawns, white simply wins after knight e4, knight d3, knight to d6, and then king to e5, and the king on e5 is actually winning despite the equal material, and white only having 2 pawns and a knight left. It's actually theoretically winning position. Computers are giving plus 90 or whatever the valuation is.
Oh my goodness. So if
So
you go
knight
king
e4
e7, you just go something like knight f4 and start picking up the pawns, yeah? Knight g6,
So-
knight h4, knight f5.
After king to e7, you move knight to f4,
Yeah.
and if you keep waiting, then knight to g6, or I think you can probably, I don't know if you can ever play f3, but you can play knight g6 and you just slowly pick up the h4 pawn, then pick up the f5 pawn, and so on.
Yeah.
So here it's just lost.
Yeah.
We were thinking about the move king to e7, which is a draw, but not a very simple one when you start to analyze it. And after analyzing that position with king e7 for a while, eventually Ding played a move we hadn't considered, h3. But it is actually probably the most accurate way, although king e7 and h3 are draw. h3 seems like the most accurate way.
Mm-hmm.
G takes h3, forced king to e7 now. So basically the point was that black changed the structure slightly. Instead of white having fg, now white has fh. And this actually makes it somewhat easier for black to hold the endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Knight c6, king f6, knight d4, tying the knight to the f pawn, it seems, but then knight e4 came, attacking f2, f3, and knight f2, attacking h3, h4, and now knight to d3, and the king is forced back. And this is the moment when it became clear that Ding was likely going to defend this game.
Mm-hmm.
King g3, king g6.
So this
Knight
h3 was basically done to create a target for my knight to be able to transfer and to give the check on d3 with tempo. Knight f2, attacking the pawn on h3, not giving white enough time to capture the pawn on f5. That was
exactly.
very well calculated by Ding, I have to say.
The h3 move creates white some weaknesses in white's pawns. The f pawn and the h pawn are suddenly weak in some lines where white tries to target the f5 pawn.
Yeah.
While the f and g pawns are more compact and harder to attack.
Yeah.
So here we had some maneuvering. It was already clear that the game was going to be very difficult to win, but we saw 20 moves of maneuvering.
Yes.
Should we go through all the rest of the moves?
I'm at knight to d4, move 67. A lot of checks have been played out. Actually, nothing in particular has happened of substance, at least. King to g2, king to g7 at move 75. And then I guess the last big decision that Ding had to make was at move 76 to play the move f4 and just change the structure. Basically saying that, okay, my king in fact gets to f5, and once my king gets to f5, you don't have ideas of king h3, king g4 to target the pawn on f4.
Yeah, I think the last important moment was on move 78.
Mm-hmm.
If he plays king h5 here, he suddenly loses because of Zug's king to h3.
And that's a Zug's
of course,
one,
the king can rest on f5, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But even more accurate, even easier is to play king h6.
Yes.
And if king h2, king g6, and so on. So you kind of dance back and forth. As soon as white plays king h3, king h5, and this is a mutual Zugzwang.
Mm.
With black to move, you lose because you have to either allow the king to g4 or you drop the f pawn.
Yeah.
With white to move, you either have to move your king back or you move your knight. And he did, in fact, move his knight 79, knight c1,
Yeah.
king h5, king h3, knight d4. Now f3 is attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And after knight d3, knight takes f3, knight takes f4, they agree to a draw because it will soon happen that white's last remaining pawn gets captured, traded off the board, and we no longer have mating material.
Yeah. Brilliant struggle, I have to say. I was watching the broadcast, and it did seem like Jan was not particularly happy. And I think Robert made a very good point. As we get an inch closer to those last couple of games, the last final stretch, it feels like if you build up a 2-point advantage, that's insurmountable. right? And you feel like almost the world champion. He felt like he had a great opportunity to potentially take the full point home and get very, very close to getting the title. So perhaps psychologically that was a blow for Jan. A positive for Ding, definitely a difficult struggle. It did feel like after bishop to h6, he was flirting with defeat, flirting with a very powerful attack on the king side by white. Definitely tenacious defense, and he managed to defend. How do you assess this game from a match perspective, from a psychological perspective? Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a good outcome for Ding. He was in a lot of danger, and I think if he had lost his game, coming back would have been too difficult. I wouldn't see that happening. I think any time that if Jan is ever pulling it up to +2, comebacks are very unlikely. And the chess.com stats gave 97% for Jan if he wins the game today.
Yeah.
77 or so percent if it's a draw, and actually gave Ding a plus in case Ding were to win the game today. And I think that's because they evaluate the white games quite highly just because of how many times the players have won with the white pieces, both of them in this match. So they're Ding has one extra white in their main games, and the chess.com algorithm or whatever is evaluating that quite importantly. That being said, it's only one extra white. Jan is still up in the match. He's in a much better situation than Ding. But if we're going to talk about today as a singular event, it's a good outcome for Ding. He stopped the bleeding of the last two games. He stopped all the negative emotions, and he got a draw on the board with the black pieces. Now he can think about how to put pressure on Jan again.
Fabi, brilliant as always. Thank you very much for dropping by. First of all, I mean, look, it's been 8 hours of commentary. You came back to the hotel 20 minutes on the road and jumped on a call with me to do this recap. So highly appreciated, of course. Leave your comments in the comment section. Thank Fabi for his time. Once again, thanks a lot. We'll see you. Tomorrow is a rest day, so don't worry about it. There's not going to be a recap. There might be some other videos coming out, but no recap tomorrow. We get a rest day. We get back into action in a couple of days. Ding will have the white pieces in game 10 and will surely look to put enough pressure to break Jan Nepomniachtchi. Guys, thanks for tuning in. See you guys in the next video.